I wrote an article about logo grids in logo design, and it's about, I think, 3 years ago that I wrote this and published this, and it still is one of the most highest ranked Google articles. And in this article I really shared my passion about logo grids and how it improved my work. And if you can see here, I always trying to find solutions within these simple designs, but also to keep things balanced and nicely aligned. I also had made some tutorials about logo design grids and how simple shapes like geometric shapes can be useful to get good results out of your work. And also, when you look at this, a lot of circles can help to really find the perfect balance in the design, and it is a nice way to have a similar flow in each corner of the symbol in this case. Also, here's Swipe Ventures logo. This is a grid that I really like. These grids are simple and to the point, although it's pretty complex, as you can see within the symbol there, but all the lines make sense, and I like it, the fact that it's explained somehow within these grids. You will later see in this course also, like, I've included information about how many X values each element holds, and I can shortly explain to this that you can calculate the X measurement of each square that you have in the grid, and that's each single square there means 1x. It can be different in size, in the amount of pixels, of course. It depends on the starting point of your logo grid in Illustrator, but in this case I'm not sure, I think it is 50 pixels per square, but each X point I have to write down below because I want to have things organized and clear to others to see that I have, like, there are 5 X's, 5 cubes layout there, and to have things more balanced somehow. I really like it to have, like, simple, to the point, and clear for others to see why I made specific decisions. Also here on white. Also this one I published a while ago on Behance, many views and a couple features as well, and I really like the way of using circles and geometric shapes to really define the perfect balance in these designs, and somehow explains the viewer as well why I make specific decisions in this design. Another design that I really like, and I've been really exploring around with these grids, and I think it's a really nice exploration for myself, but also educational for others perhaps, to show what an outcome of a design will be, but also like the baseline, the blueprint of each design. I really like to not to brag about look at me, this is a great design, but just to have a little bit more depth behind these symbols and letter marks that you can see here. Similar with the other X's, like this 5x, 5 cubed, and these are a little bit bigger, but this is really about the measurements that you want to use. In this case, like 1 square is 1x, and I also have like half X borders, especially when you have those cuttings here. It's nice to have like everything the same. There's a nice rhythm in this design, and I really like that. Also the lower part of the I, the Y, is really like the similar as the L, but in a different direction, of course. This is really this actually is one of those grids that I happen to repeat a lot because I really like the simplicity. I think it's to the point, and it helps me to find the perfect balance between the symbol and a word mark. It can really help me to find how much white space does the logo needs to have, and how much distance each element should have, and also the circles, how big do they need to be, and still to work on a smaller scale, for example. It's all about discovering and exploring around to really find the best possible directions. Another example, which I also shared in this other web page that I showed earlier, is the Zen's logo that I created a couple of years ago. And this really shows like there's this simple letter mark. It's really my kind of logo because I often have logos with a letter, and somehow I really like to have like a letter and then use something meaningful within that letter to make it more suiting to the brand. And using like geometric shapes to find perfect alignments of these forms can really improve my work. And I think that is really interesting if you haven't been using grids in logo design. There are so many extra tools that you can master and explore for yourself to really get your work to a higher level. And logo gridding is really fun to play around with, but it's really learningful and great to improve your work with. This example from, I think it's Roy Schmidt, designer Roy Schmidt. He also included a raster, like a grid, but in really a different style, and I really like that because it really shows the flow of each shape, and it isn't like not every line is outlined there, but it's really about the baseline of the design. It's really nice to share it with us. Another example from a designer not Roy Smith, but the logo Smith, I guess. And he laid down very complex logo grids, and I really like that. This is really I'm a real logo geek, but if it comes down to logo grids, I guess I'm not always using this depthful gridding elements, but it really explains a lot about each decision within these designs, and it's really interesting. And also you can see here like a breakdown of the distances between the lettering and the distance between the symbol when it's used on the vertical lookup. It's really interesting to see and to learn from these really process from other designers as well. Another example which I really like is this is just a simple but still really interesting to look at word mark, and I really like those the corner cutoffs, and it really is nice to have it repeated in the next letter there as well. So it's like a flipping letter there. It's exactly the same, I guess, but it's really nice and really unique. Another logo that I created I think 2 years back, Mila, but I really like this whole gridding process. I really like to see like every line is there for a meaning, and it really helps to have my work, or this logo specifically, like there is like a nice rhythm in it, and it has a nice calm to it, and it doesn't feel forced somehow because there's enough space. It's easy to use on small size or larger sizes. I really like to lay down those grid lines and explain as well to the viewers and my client as well. Well, this is like my proposal, and I think it's really working because there's a nice and great visual balance, not only technical but somehow also visual and optical, because I often tweak things a little bit later after the grid is done, just to make sure everything is in line and it feels right and natural. Another example, I think this is one I shared earlier, Intuo. I really like to also find solutions to perfectly align the word mark next to the symbol and use specific points that they match up. Another design that I've created, I think it's 5 years ago already. This was my first logo that I really was, it was my logo that kick-started my career as a logo designer, I guess. And it was really like on Behance. I got featured many times with this project, and as you can see here, I also used many simple curves, and to make it feel natural, and it has a nice flow to it. And with including these curves, you know that there's like a visual balance in there, and that's really interesting and nice to see. Another example from Helvetic Brands on Dribble here. I really like the simple mark, but still there is so much meaning behind each distance and the decision why specific lines go that way. And also the typography is really, it feels very complex, but when you forget about the grid, it's so clean and simple, and it's really good. I think it's really good. So let's jump into my Illustrator, because I want to show you how I create a design directly in Illustrator and then build a grid around it, because I think it's interesting to see with me how I create these grids from scratch. But still, I'm gonna duplicate or remake this design, just using this as an example. And I have my grid enabled, and I enable the snap to grid point and snap to point, and then make sure I have my grid on the back. And right now I think in my preferences, let's see, guides and grid, I have, per square it will be 50 pixels, and subdivided it in 8 blocks, so 8 times 8 blocks in total. So that's my starting point, and I can always adjust that later on, but I feel that this is always a nice starting point. So that when we start, I'm gonna make this in full black, I think, just to start with, and I'm just gonna duplicate this part, but still I'm gonna remake it, of course, and later on include the typography next to it. I'm just gonna, well, roughly trying to make it almost perfectly similar, but will be tricky. Let's see, I've started with 5 rectangles there. I'm using my ellipse tool to form these other parts, and therefore I have to hold shift, make these circles, and the inner parts will be these sizes. And sometimes I often use my align tool for those stuff. And let's see, I can also have those two in. I think I can cut these in half, delete the middle one, and also get rid of those anchors and have this as one shape. And if I connect that, yeah, that's a good starting point. I think this is a little bit thicker maybe, but I kind of like this. I think it works. Yeah, let's go for the next one. The other circle, like that, and there also is inner part. So I'm really working within my grids, but let's zoom in, and I think this will give you an idea of how I usually work and create these designs. Of course, it takes a little bit longer normally to create these designs because you have sketching and stuff, but I don't want to include that here because that's not really the point. Let's see, and now I have this part I want to connect. So the idea of this design was that it was a letter P, but also like a paper clip, and also a reference to I think it was measurements and actions. So these are the steps and measurements, so then it's important to have like equal distances between each part. Let's see, let's connect those two as well. Not sure what I've pressed now. Sometimes I'm not really sure if I'm doing this right, but yeah, it's always about exploring around and finding out the best solutions. But in this case, I think it's doable to duplicate this design like this. Let's see. Oh yeah, I can easily have like these two parts gone. And if I'm not mistaken, it can fit. Yeah, Let's see if I done it right. Yeah, I think so. And then I'm gonna check how it fits in one square, because I want to have the starting point and end point starting from the grid itself. I think if I use this, I will be okay with it. Let's see. I'm gonna make this part a little bit longer, I think, like 1 notch, and this is okay like that. I think it feels good. Alright, I'm more happy. Only the lettering I'm gonna duplicate, that will be needed to make as well. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of this part, and now I'm gonna create everything like a flat surface. Yeah, I think this looks good. And now I already see that like these inner parts are a little bit wider, but I don't really care. I really like the balance this has, and I think it's easier to use in smaller size as well, and still is the same vibe, and yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay, so I'm gonna align this, make sure it's aligned to the selection, not to the artboard, and a little bit like that. I think that will be good. And then I'm enabling the grid again. Yeah, have everything connected, and lay down this part. Oops. Yeah, well, I'm gonna make sure that this is aligned later on. That won't be needed right now. I'm just gonna focus on the symbol first. And let me start with selecting that and make it 30%, because I want to have it like more in the background, and the typography can get done later. First I'm gonna make a bounding box, oops, like a box around this part, and make it, I'm gonna pick a color, blue, and I have it 1 pixel, that's okay. And I'm gonna build the inner grid, because that's how I like to call that. I'm putting it in 0.3. I think it's a nice size, works for me. Just put on every line or edge, I'm not sure how you want to call it, a line, and later on I can better refine things and see what's working. Let's see. Yeah, look, already I have one thing that I want to make sure. I think if I unlock this and select these parts, have it put down like that, maybe it's working, we'll see later. This as well, just see how it gets there, because now I think that's because the thickness of these lines can stand for the X value, because I think that's a nice starting point. So if I can make it fit on that, it's pretty nice. But then, as you can see already, not like that, I have to lock this part and then stretch that out a little bit. Yeah, I think it's getting differently out the result I wanted it, because I think this line should be in the middle there, and therefore I need to, let's see, pull this back a little bit. Let's do that, let's try that. Oops. Sometimes it's always about exploring until you get to the good point that you like the design. Is this better? No, I think not. I think more like this maybe. Why is it not working? What am I missing? Maybe stretch it out a little bit. I think this is maybe better. Yeah, I think I'm better off with this result. Like this. Alright. And then I'm gonna place it like this. And sometimes it doesn't really matter that you don't have it like perfectly online at this part, because I know that the inner lines, the white space of these parts are less white as the whole shape as well. So I have to make sure that it just fits within the final design later on. I really like this distance. It doesn't really matter that it don't line up with this part, because here already the edge of the circle will start. Because at this point, because I often will include a circle like that and put it in that, I like it that it falls directly in the middle there. So these circles usually I will put a little bit dark, often use black, and have it like a dash line. And I also have it 0.3 sized, and these circles can also be duplicated, oops, also same size, just to make sure everything has the same direction, and it's like in the end the whole, like the center point will be in the same direction as this one. So that's a nice touch. I really like those geometric simplicities, and also like the it measured out perfectly the way I want it. Also, let's see if this fits. No, it doesn't fit. It's a different circle. Doesn't matter. Oops. Not selecting that one. And it falls perfectly in line. That's nice. 0.3 again. And I don't like to round off this part, because when you see a real paperclip, you don't also having this part rounded off, and it feels better to keep this line straight. Let's see this line as well. Keep 0.3 line, yeah. And then the large one. Usually I think that I do these lining later on, because I really want to make sure everything is perfectly aligned already. And now you can also see, like, maybe you want these lines to have connected, like on top of each other, but in this case I think it's pretty okay to have it like this. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it like this. I'm happy with that. Let's see, have I missed anything, any line? No, so that's okay. Let's move on to the next. And because I have these squares made as 1x, I'm just gonna put it beside this part, because I want to know how it feels. What if I hold this next to it? Oops, make it 1 pixel. Oh, 1, not. And I think it's not working that well. I think it's 1.5 pixels now. And I think the distance already feels better. I think it's, when you look at it here, maybe there's even more space to it, but I kind of like this connection here. I think this is working pretty okay. So at this point, I'm gonna create 4 times x as a square, but then I have this, I think it's like that size. This will be the white space, most definitely, or a little bit, yeah, it is. And this will be placed next to the symbol, and also will be the part that is connected to the symbol, the space between it. And let me make a square like that. I'm doing it by eye now, but so that's okay. And I also will put it on the end, and because I measured out, like, this is 4 times x, like 1, 2, 3, 4. I want this as well. Let's see, let's delete that and duplicate this part, put it on there, and make a couple more, but then have it look like this. I kind of like it already. So I can also make sure that the typography fits better next to the symbol, because now I can use, like, let's say, in this case this line is already almost touching that baseline, I think. And in this case, let's see, I think that one, I think it's pretty perfect already. And I'm thinking that I already decided that on the other version, and in this case I want to have a really small piece a little bit lower like that, and I'm gonna disable the grid just to make sure that I can scale this up a little bit. Oops. Okay, let's see. Yeah, and it really doesn't matter that this falls a little bit over it. I think I like that. It's just a little bit loose design, not bad at all. Alright, I like that. So this I can also put in 30% as the other symbol, lock it on the background, and in this case I really like this already. And these outer parts, those are really like the space, the safe area, white space that you want to have space around the design, the logo, that in real life, that if the logo is going to be used, that they don't put any designs or any other stuff around it. So it's always like a free area around that logo, and I kind of like that. It's important to know about as a designer as well, but also for the clients. So it's good to have it written down in a, let's see, a brand book, or you have like a brand guidelines. Let's always have like those rules together, because it's helpful for the client and the one who's working with these files. Let's see, I kind of like this. Yeah, it's okay. Let's use that one. And usually I am pretty satisfied with this, and I can also like adjust the typography a little bit if I like. If I want like a little different letter T and also similar letter L, let's see how to do it, like that, then I can also try this technique within the grid, but also with a different color. I like to use magenta because it's pretty bright and easy to spot on a background like this. Let's see if it's light up. Yeah, I always have the smart guides on. I think that's on a few smart guides, Apple or Command U. It's really useful when you're designing in grids. Look at that, like it's perfectly placed underneath that square. So that's nice. There's always those nice little accidents, I call them, because it's fitting the grid as well, that I have that angle cut on the letter. Oops. Well, it doesn't really need to be perfect right now, but so you just get an idea on how I usually do these things. So these are like the cutting lines that I have there. It is really nice to play around with those lines and where they end up. In this case, it will be interesting. What if I have it like perfectly within the circle of that, the center of that? Just a little bit deep information perhaps, but those things are going through my mind every day when I design a logo. I want to make things different, and these subtle changes in typography can make it really like unique and more custom to a designer, or for a client of course. And for a designer it's nice to really find new ways to be creative, I guess, and stand out with your work. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm gonna further design the, let's say, oops, let's use a dark gray, let's say also 30%, and I want to measure out like these parts. And usually when I design for clients, I want to make sure that they understand what the X value is. So in this case I want to highlight one specific part where nothing is really going on, and in this case I think I'm gonna go for blue. Let's pick that blue and put it at 1 pixel. Yeah, and I use it like the inner size because it's a little bit thicker than a normal 1 pixel guide, just to explain a little bit more about, maybe it's even better to have a sticker like that, yeah. Just to explain a little bit more about what is the X value. So in this case, I'm just gonna write down X. And in the brand guidelines, of course, you can explain what each element stands for. So in this case, I want to explain like X value stands for 50 pixels. And the whole grid is made of specific pixels and made out of squares that are aligned equally. So in this case, I have this measured out as X. And sometimes you want to have, like, let's say, the middle part here, like the space between the typography and the logo mark symbol. You want to have that like separately, know that this space is like the space between the symbol and the typography. Let me try to do this quickly for you. And I can write down there, and this is a little bit tricky because I wasn't really sure how much this was, but I think, and I look at it now, 1.75 I would say. X 1.75, and usually I would go, yeah, this is pretty okay because it's is not a really weird number, but usually I will go for 1 or 2 X, but it really is depending on the design, of course, and how it will look on large and small scale, because in the end you want to change things optically as well, and not only stay within the grid. So in this case, I have that written down. I can also put this line on top of that, so it's connected, but make sure that it is, that's part of the typography. I think it would be even better to have it like a little bit thicker, more clearer, like that, and you can align the letter a little bit better. And let's say these are like maybe 12 X12, and you can also put that on the height of the lettering, but also you can include that here on top of it to also give examples on how wide this symbol is, or how high it is. So these are really like extra details that you can use. Also on these lines you can also include the degree, what the angle is going at. So that's just a little bit more information, but it can be really helpful if you want to have a consistent and cohesive design, and include those effects and styles in the further branding. It's pretty interesting to explore a little bit more. So yeah, that's this design, and I think it's a nice view on how I usually work and how I create logos, but also how I create grids after I design the logo.